there's no sorcery or divination in Israel, they're blessed and they can't be cursed. Well, duh, how do you curse Israel? Get them to fall into sorcery and divination, right there. If Yahweh says, Israel is blessed because there is no sorcery and divination. Hey Balaam, guess what? Here's the way to get around it. Why did he say that? Why did Yahweh tell Balaam that the reason they were blessed is because there was no sorcery and divination? And it's like, why give away the secret? It's like Samson. Why are you so strong? Well, I mean, these different reasons. And finally told Delilah, okay, it's my hair. Come on, man. Why do you give away your secret? The same type of thing. What I'm suggesting is, Yahweh makes it really clear, this is why you're blessed, this is why you're cursed. The reason you're blessed is there's no sorcery or divination. So, hey, Balaam, why don't you suggest to Balak, now I'm saying Yahweh said that, but he made it, it was a setup. Balaam then says to Balak, hey, why don't you send in your pretty little girls with all their sorcery and divination, and you'll entice the men of Israel, and they'll corrupt themselves, and they will lose the covering of their Elohim, and they will bring this onslaught of plague and weakness, and you could just walk in and take their stuff, and it would be indefensible, which is exactly what happened. Is it that easy just to get the advantage over Israel? Is it that easy to slaughter the people of the Almighty's favor? Why? Because we're so prone to stray from His ways. So how do we get their strength back? You get rid of the sorcery and divination and go back to His words. That's what this is about. These are His words. How do we go back to His words? How do we know these are His words? How do you know what the truth is? Where's the measure and the standard for what He said? Well, the reason for studying this Paleo-Hebrew is because I would propose to you that the alphabet itself has the proof of its validity embedded within it. And the way you see that is simply by seeing what the letters mean. Now, is there anybody that's not familiar with Lou White's book called Fossilized Customs? You're not familiar? Okay. He did a pretty good job. It's a little paperback book, and what he did there is he compiled like an encyclopedia where the names of the days came from, the names of the months, the different holidays and festivals that we have as modern traditions. And he catalogs them all and says this is the roots of where they came from. On the very back cover, he has this chart with the Hebrew letters, and then showing you the English and possibly even Greek equivalent. Yeah, the Greek was in there too. And then he says what it means. So for the sake of not necessarily writing it down, I'll point to this chart as a reference, so we can see that okay?
No.
You can't see it?
I
Or
mean
should
the
I write it
colors,
down?
we can see the colors, yeah. Yeah, it's too small.
Okay,
If
tell you
you
what, I'll
write
write
it down,
here.
that'd be great.
No problem. Okay, so here's the thing. Just to reference the chart, just so you know. I made this chart because I was studying what the letters mean, and I had a couple of kind of, you might call them, insights about how the letters work in relation to each other, which is what this chart is about. So there's two ways that the chart works. One is from the top all the way down to the bottom, in a single column. If you follow this white column all the way down, all those are Tav letter matters. This red column all the way down is a Nun. This yellow column would be the Vav. This blue column is all Bet stuff. And I put these colors down here to kind of help register visually. Across the top is the English letters. Here's the Greek letters. In blue here is the letters which are found in the Paleo format Leviticus scroll that they found in Qumran at the Dead Sea Scrolls site. So I have a copy of this book where they have photographs, and I was looking at it, and I was noticing that the scribe had weird shapes of the letters, and they don't match the letters that I use, which are in red here. But I put those there so you realize there's different letters. Like some of these looks like maybe a letter Mem, but it's actually a Zodi, and the only way to know that would be I found the place where it said, this is say Leviticus 26:4, and then you look and you compare the letters and go, oh, that's what they're doing. So the scribes had different penmanship. There wasn't a standardized font for writing in Paleo. Now, I think that Solomon may have standardized the Paleo font because he studied letters and words, and he wrote to most of the Proverbs and the book of Ecclesiastes and the Song of Solomon. But there was different handwriting styles. So if you look at Jeff Benner's site, if you look at Frank Seeken's book, you'll see different styles of Paleo. What I did to get the style that's written in red here, which is the same as this, is I found the letter shape which most cleanly and elegantly pictured the meaning of the letter. So not only was it easy to write, it was kind of easy on the eye to look at, and it represented what it means. So what I did is I took, these are actual letter shapes, but they may have been found in artifacts from different eras, compiled together into this particular format. So I can't say, oh yes, the piece of pottery that was found from 520 BC in this particular town happens to have this alphabetic style. There may not have been one using this alphabetic style, but these are all valid letter shapes. Just so you know, I'm not claiming that these are the exact shapes that the finger of Elohim wrote on the tables of stone. I'm suggesting it was something like that, but the modern Jews of today don't like the paleo. They think, the scribes, the sages, the studiers of these things, think that the Almighty wrote with modern flame letter style on the tables of stone, that the rabbis, that the scholars, the Levites, studied the modern form, and that the paleo became inherited from the Canaanites or the Egyptians, was used by the common people as kind of a guttural, vulgar, common language that the peasants and the illiterate guys, you might say, would use. And then they were taken into captivity, and then in the days where Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the book, Ezra and Nehemiah were released from Medo-Persian captivity and sent back to Jerusalem. Ezra the scribe took with him the modern flame letters. It's like, oh, well, he found it in Babylon, and so now he brought it out for public use. That's what they say. I disagree, based on a hypothesis of the book of Daniel chapter 12, which we can get into in a bit, but I want to kind of keep on track here to show you this first. We can go into that if you're interested. The point is, Aleph. That is, you can see kind of a picture of an ox head with his ears and the horns. You can kind of see an ox head shape, right? So, Aleph is an ox. Bet, if you see kind of like a tadpole or an embryo sort of shape, or a fish, or even the floor plan of a house. So if you have a tent with a roof covering on it, you have the public side here, and then around the corner you've got the private side. And apparently, from what I hear, that used to be called my father's house, or my father's place was tucked around the corner. That was the private space, but this is the public space. Well, it makes sense that you have public and private, but also in the embryo shape, you have the private space, which is your mind, which develops here, and then you have the public, so there's you've got the backbone out of which extends the rest of your body, so you've got the private and the public. So all these themes are embedded in the letter shapes. As far as the gimel, you've got the head of this camel, and so here's the shape of the camel, but it's also the shape of a boomerang that you throw it, it goes out and comes back. And it all has to do with also a conduit, right? The camel eats food and it goes down this pipeline to this location here. So what you have with a gimel is not only a conduit or a roadway for this connector, like a neck. You've got the body here and the head here, and you've got this connector, which is called a nexus, or that which hooks the two of them together. That's also this gimel concept of the neck. So what I'm saying is that when you see the letter gimel, do you think camel? Do you think neck? Do you think roadway? Do you think conduit? Do you think boomerang? When you see the letter gimel, it's actually all those things. All those things at the same time. But the word gimel is literally the word for camel. You say, well, what does a camel do? A camel goes from here to there and back around, like a truck, like a semi-truck, carrying a load from back and forth. What is a semi-truck carrying? A load of cargo. Well, the concept of a gimel thing is also the cargo, which is being carried from here to there. It's also the fact that there's a sender and a receiver, and the fact that this truck is designed to go back and forth. I mean, that's what it does. It's a back and forth thing. All those are gimel concepts. So when you look at the letter gimel, it's not that you necessarily read camel. When you see the letter bet, it's not just door or house, and dalet door, and aleph ox. On the back of Lou White's book, he has written aleph, ox, bet, house, gimel, camel. Now, in the chart, just to explain this top for a second, each letter in these columns, this is all to tell you what the letters mean, or a way to see the letters. This section here, where you have the same 22 letters, consider that each letter is like a lens, a type of lens. This one might be a microscopic lens, this one a telescopic lens, this one an infrared lens, this one an X-ray lens, this one like a sunglass filter type of a lens. Every letter is a different type of lens by which you can see the world, by which you can see who Yahweh is, by which you can read the words of Scripture. So if somebody said, well, what would the world look like if you had X-ray vision? You know, the Superman thing, you'd see everybody's skeletons? Or does the clothes disappear like the TSA, scanner thing at the airport? What does this mean? And you could say, well, what if everything was like a microscopic lens? Then you could see like little bacteria and or the telescopic, where you could look at stars, and it's like, well, consider that Yahweh gave us this alphabet, which I'll prove that point too in a few minutes here. He gave us this alphabet showing himself. So that with each letter, we see him. So now if we're trying to measure truth, how do we know that something is actually true? How do we know that we have a standard for reading the Bible, for identifying the Messiah, for knowing what he said and what doctrines to believe and what doctrines not to believe? It's by using the lenses of this alphabet. So here's the point of what this is. In the gray here, this tells you what is the general notion of each letter. So it says Aleph is a strategy. So if Aleph is a strategy, then the Aleph reference or point of view concerning every other letter is that every other letter can be seen basically in a strategy manner. So the strategy of an Aleph is a plan or a purpose or oneness. The strategy of a Bet is bifurcated, diverged, or incorporated. The strategy of a Gimel is static, or dynamic, not static. Well, I didn't mention anything about static or dynamic here. But the letter Gimel in modern form is like this, with that. It's a letter with a foot. Being a foot, it's a verb, it's action, it's to be in motion, like the truck on the highway. Is she okay there?
What?
She's okay.
Yeah.
She's okay. You're okay.
Okay, does anybody want to take a break and get a glass of water?
I have to